Our main story tonight concerns India. It just narrowly beats out America as the country where a 20-minute lecture in this accent is the least welcome. India is currently preparing for a very important visitor who is arriving tomorrow.
Donald Trump's first visit to India will be a special one. He will be accompanied by the First Lady, Melania Trump. Many are wondering if they will make an unscheduled visit to the Taj Mahal, the enduring symbol of love.
Yeah, why wouldn't they do that? What possibly makes you think that this happy couple would not want to visit an enduring symbol of love? Every trip is a honeymoon for these two lovebirds. Couple goals. But it is true. Trump's first state visit to India begins tomorrow, and at the centre of it will be Prime Minister Narendra Modi, a man for whom Trump seems to have a great deal of affection. Just listen to him talk about Modi when they met up last September.
He's a great gentleman and a great leader. And I remember India before, now not intimately, but I remember India before, and it was very torn. There was a lot of dissension, a lot of fighting, and he brought it all together. Like a father would bring it together. Maybe he's the father of India. We'll call him the father of India. I think that's not so bad.
Yeah, that's not so bad, is it? You know what a father is, right? It's a guy who brings the family together by giving them lots of money, but never emotional validation. And sure, that means the remainder of your life is spent in a series of grasping quests for recognition and unconditional love from everyone around you. And if anyone doesn't love you enough, you hate them and want them to die in prison, because living this kind of life is like being in a very nice boat made of friends who think you're the best, and anyone who doesn't think that is a small hole in your boat, and it lets the water in, and eventually you sink below the waves, and there's nothing left but you, drowning in the silent screaming abyss that your father bestowed to you as your gruesome birthright. Well, Modi is like that for India. You know, a father, a daddy. But calling Modi the father of India is completely inappropriate for multiple reasons, not the least of which is that there is a certain Gandhi who already holds that exact fucking title. Which is not to say that Modi is not popular. He is. He was recently overwhelmingly re-elected for a second 5-year term, and his rallies often feature supporters wearing masks of his face. And while I do get that that is intended as a show of support, let me just say this. Please don't ever come to this show and do that. That is literally my nightmare. And Modi's cult of personality extends well beyond India. You may be aware of him as one of the most aggressive huggers on the world stage, or from his charming appearance on Man vs. Wild with Bear Grylls.
Here we go. If you wondered if there's elephant, there is definitely elephant.
Elephant. Yeah.
Have a smell.
Yeah.
That's good, honest.
It's a now fertilizer.
And when it is really fresh and it's really wet, straight out of the anus, once in Africa, I squeezed it like this. And all the juice because it was almost sterile, but not today.
OK. I know that seems gross, but remember, that dung is straight out of the anus. And there's nothing better than elephant dung when it's fresh from the butthole, direct from the rectum, still convalescent from the small intestine. I am ride or die for team straight from the anus. None of that processed elephant dung. None of that I can't believe it's not from an elephant's anus nonsense. And certainly not Stevia's elephant dung. I know it has less calories than anus dung, but it tastes like shit in exactly the wrong way. But while Modi may have charmed Bear Grylls, the world and our current president, within India, he's an increasingly controversial figure because his government has pursued a steadily escalating persecution of religious minorities. Persecution so intense that for the last 2 months, Indians across the country have been taking to the streets in anger.
On Sunday in New Delhi, the protests turned violent. Police fired tear gas and clashed with students who accused officers of indiscriminate violence. At least 100 were injured. At one point, protesters torched public buses.
Yeah, and burnt-out buses generally aren't a sign that people are happy with you. It's the gesture that says, you suck so hard, I don't even care how I get home. And if citizens in the world's largest democracy, home to over 1 billion people, are either wearing masks of Modi or marching in the streets, it seems like tonight it might be worth exploring why that is, where things could be heading and why calling Modi the father of India is stupid at best and dangerous at worst. And let's start by acknowledging Modi's significant appeal, because he has an inspirational personal story. He grew up poor and rose from selling tea on railway platforms in Gujarat to running that state and eventually the entire country. His election in 2014 was actually the subject of our very first show, back when he looked the same and I looked 30 years younger. Can I just say, if this is happening because someone is slowly poisoning me, please do it faster. Now, Modi ran as a populist, and since becoming Prime Minister has taken one big swing after another, often with the goal of improving the lives of the poor. And he's had some success there. He's delivered new cooking gas connections to 72 million poor families, and he fulfilled a campaign promise to build over 110 million toilets, which is a big deal. That addressed a major public health hazard, so much so that a few years back, UNICEF India launched a catchy campaign called Take Your Poo to the Loo.
First thing in the morning, what do I see? A pile of shit staring at me. I close my eyes, I step away. No matter where I go, there's no getting away. Let's take the poo to the loo. Let's take the poo to the loo.
Yes, exactly. That is catchy. That is my new favourite song, and it will remain so until the inevitable Take Your Poo to the Old Town Road remix. And then that will be my favourite. But Modi has had some big swing and misses too, like during his first term when he decided to fight corruption and money laundering by abruptly cancelling some of the most commonly used banknotes in India with just 4 hours' notice, which went about as well as you might expect.
Today, as banks opened for the first time since the surprise announcement, there was utter chaos. People lined up for hours to change their money. Some had to be turned away because the banks just ran out of cash.
They are not giving us money.
They keep telling me, come on Monday, come on Monday. I've been standing in the queue for 3 days now and I haven't gotten any money.
Yeah, that's ridiculous and an entirely predictable consequence of announcing without any warning that 86% of Indian money was no longer money. Just think about what would happen here if Trump suddenly announced that as of midnight tonight, every $10 and $20 bill is worthless. It would be complete mayhem, and then, of course, Republicans would defend it, the Supreme Court would uphold it, and within 2 weeks people would be holding up signs denouncing money at Trump rallies, because that's the fucking world we seem to live in now. Modi's policy was a mess. It caused complete chaos, and it didn't even make a dent in corruption, and yet, incredibly, it didn't make him any less popular. And that is actually one of Modi's greatest strengths. His charisma is such that he somehow evades public anger sticking to him, which is a very dangerous superpower, especially when you consider how extreme one of his defining beliefs is. Because Modi is a Hindu nationalist, and at the core of that is a belief that India is a fundamentally Hindu nation, which is provocative, given that India's founders, Gandhi and Nehru, explicitly disavowed that, with Gandhi saying the state should undoubtedly be secular. And yet, throughout his career, Modi's party, the BJP, has served as the political arm of a hardcore Hindu nationalist paramilitary group, the RSS. And I know that I've just thrown a lot of letters at you there, but if there is one thing that I'd really like you to know about the RSS, and by extension, Modi's party, it is this.
The RSS was formed in 1925 by Keshav Baliram Hedgewar with the purpose of creating a Hindu unity. Early leaders such as M.S. Golwalkar admired Adolf Hitler and the Nazi movement for steps taken to ensure, quote, the purity of the race and its culture.
That is true. The founders of the RSS admired Hitler for ensuring the purity of the race, which is just not a chill thing to admire Hitler for. There is one and only one thing that it's okay to admire Hitler for, and it's the fact that he killed Hitler. Look, everyone talks a big game when it comes to killing Hitler, but to be fair, Hitler is the only one who stepped up and got it done. And for that I say, way to go, Hitler. All the other Hitlering that Hitler did, thumbs down. But that very last bitler of Hitler, thumbs up. And by the way, do not take that image out of context. Look, obviously, it is extremely worrying to have a Prime Minister with that association, especially because India has always struggled to strike a balance between its ideals of tolerance and the reality of religious tensions, which have erupted multiple times over the years. And unfortunately, Modi himself was right at the centre of one of those eruptions.
In 2002, violent riots broke out along sectarian lines across Gujarat, killing more than 1,000 people, mostly Muslims. Modi oversaw all of this as head of the state and is blamed for doing nothing to stop the violence. The United States revoked the leader's visa over the incidents in 2005.
Yeah, and that is not good. And what somehow makes it even worse is that over the years, Modi has offered at most tepid apologies for his actions back then, once even walking out of an interview when asked if he regretted that the killings happened, which is just not okay. When you are being asked about your role in the deaths of thousands, you simply don't get to walk out of an interview. That kind of behaviour is reserved for Adam Driver in an NPR interview about Marriage Story, and that is only because Adam Driver can do whatever the fuck he wants. Step on my throat, Adam Driver, you rudely large man. Break my fingers, you brooding mountain. Modi has employed a similar tactic of strategic quiet as Prime Minister. He doesn't talk much about religious minorities, but those closest to him are comfortable saying a lot. India is home to the second largest population of Muslims on earth, and many members of the BJP have openly targeted them. For instance, when it came time for Modi and his party to appoint a chief minister of Uttar Pradesh, a state that's home to 200 million people, they chose Yogi Adityanath, a man who has said things like this.
हिंदू अलग संस्कृति है, मुस्लिम अलग संस्कृति है. दोनों एक साथ नहीं रह सकती. दो संस्कृतियां कभी एक साथ नहीं रह सकती हैं. अगर एक हिंदू को मारेंगे तो 100 को हम भी मारेंगे.
Holy shit! That is not even dog whistle Islamophobia. That's basically just writing, "We hate Muslims" on a dog and then throwing that dog at the nearest Muslim. Clearly, that rhetoric is an affront to everything that India stands for. Remember, Gandhi and Nehru, the founders of modern India, stood for religious pluralism, meaning they encouraged the coexistence of diverse faiths. And you may actually need to remember that, because Modi and his party are now actively trying to erase whole sections of India's history. Nehru, for instance, has been edited out of some history textbooks altogether. And what has been added to the curriculum is pretty eye-catching.
In June 2014, the Gujarat government introduced a set of 10 textbooks for primary schools. Most lessons revolve around the idea of Indian supremacy.
For example, on page 22 of a book called Prernadeep 3, there's a very interesting story about how God created the world. He was making bread and he took it out of the oven too early, and that's how white people were created. The second time round, he left it in the oven too long, and that's how Negroes were born. The book uses the word Negro. And then the last time round, he learned from his two previous mistakes and took the bread out just in time, and that's how Indians were created.
Okay, there is clearly a lot wrong with that. But for starters, that's just not how white people were created. I don't want to get too technical here, but white people were created when a sale at Coles fucked a true crime podcast. That's how it happened. I'm not going to go into it anymore, but that is our origin story right there. And look, stop it! Look, this isn't just a cultural battle. Since winning re-election, Modi has moved from quiet support for religious intolerance to concrete action. And in classic Modi fashion, he's done it with a big swing. Because remember those protests that I showed you earlier? They were sparked by a very controversial act.
The government's planning to publish a nationwide register of citizens. Everyone would be forced to provide documents to prove they're Indian. Those who can't would be considered illegal immigrants. Only non-Muslims would be protected under the new citizenship law.
It's true, Modi and his party may be about to strip millions of Muslims of citizenship, and they did it in a diabolically clever two-step way. First, they announced they'd be rolling out a National Register of Citizens, or NRC, where everyone would need to provide documents proving they were Indian citizens, something that many people, particularly the poor or illiterate, simply do not have. Now, that alone did not target Muslims, but here is the second part. Modi's government also introduced something called the Citizenship Amendment Bill, or CAB, which granted citizenship to undocumented people if they were from basically any religious minority but Muslims. So to recap, The NRC kicks everyone who's undocumented off the citizenship rolls, and the CAB lets everyone back on except Muslims. They're basically Marie Kondoing India, and it's only Muslims that don't seem to spark joy in them. And while Modi has insisted that in no way is his intent to target Muslims, his closest confidant and basic second-in-command, Amit Shah, has been pretty unambiguous about what the combination of these two steps is designed to do.
Through CAB, we will give citizenship to all the Hindu, Sikh, Buddhist, Jain, Christian refugees. After that, pay attention, friends, we'll implement NRC. Tell me, should we throw out the infiltrators or not? The infiltrators are sucking the blood of this country like parasites.
Wow. Infiltrators are sucking our blood like parasites. And it's important to remember, Amit Shah is basically Modi's right hand. And if you don't disavow what your right hand is doing, that is then on you. If Kermit the Frog told you the Lindbergh baby had it coming, you might reasonably go, Jim, are you going to fucking say something about this? You're not? What is wrong with you, Jim? Stop the frog saying this stuff. You have the power to do that. These citizenship laws have had a huge impact across India, with many understandably terrified, especially as the government is now building detention camps for all the illegal immigrants that they are creating. And there is a cruel irony for some of those building the camps.
It's a detention camp in the making, about 450 laborers working on its construction since December. Among them, Nayaz Ali, who might very well end up living here once it's completed.
I am very worried because my name didn't come up in the final list of National Registry of Citizens. I don't know what will happen next. I work here during the day and think about my future at night.
Yeah, that man is building a detention centre that he may end up inside. That is simply the most nauseating thing that I have seen tonight, and I'll remind you that just 16 minutes ago, I showed you a man squeezing a piece of fresh elephant shit into his own mouth. Look, all of this is really dangerous. And I'd say that this atmosphere could get someone killed, but the truth is it already has. Since Modi came to power, there has been an overall rise in attacks against minorities. And it is incredibly depressing to see India heading in this direction. The only glimmer of hope here is that for perhaps the first time in Modi's whole career, his actions are creating a massive and sustained backlash. Even as Trump shows up to hail him for uniting India, the protests against him are very much ongoing. And while Modi has tried to paint them as the work of Muslim extremists, the protesters actually come from a wide range of backgrounds, united by a single argument.
The idea behind the act, it's so vicious that every thinking human being, everyone in this country will be affected, and therefore is standing up.
Hindu, Muslims, everybody are equal. We want that equality.
I'm a Hindu, but I'm an Indian first. So when it comes to the values of secularism given by the India, when it comes to the ideas of foundations of India, then no matter what I should be in that, I should preserve the constitutional values, which is the utmost priority than any other thing.
Exactly. Exactly. And that is genuinely inspiring. And when you see moments like that, you begin to hope that Trump might actually be right in a way about the man that he's about to visit, just not in the exact way that he thinks. Because when he says that Modi is bringing India together, with any luck, the thing that unites them may actually end up being their complete disgust over what he is trying to do. Because India, home of this enduring symbol of love, frankly deserves a lot more than this temporary symbol of hate.